What's going on, guys? My name is Chris, and this is the Guide to the Races for Age of Wonders 3. In this guide, I'm going to give you a general overview by discussing all the pros and cons to each race, along with their terrain preferences. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of what each race allows you to produce unit-wise, but I think that should be a nice starting point for all of you guys out there. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on into the first race, which is the Draconians. The Draconians are going to be more of the dragon type race. They're going to be like a dragon humanoid race. All Draconian units gain fire protection, ranging from 20 to 60%. There's only one Draconian unit, Draconian Elders, that are a support unit, and they get 100% fire protection. All Draconian units, though, suffer 20% frost weakness across the board. All Draconian cities will generate +3 mana regen, and all Draconian units will have fast healing trait, which means that they gain +6 health regen per turn. Draconian terrain preference is that they like the Barrens and Volcanic, but they dislike the Arctic and they hate the Blighted. Moving on to the Dwarf, all Dwarf units are armored except for their Prospector units. They have +1 armor and +1 magic resist, but due to this, their unit cost is going to be increased by 10%. All Dwarf units also gain Cave Crawling and Mountaineering, which increases the amount that they can move both in the underground and in the mountains. They also gain Night Vision, which increases their line of sight in underground territory. Their terrain preference is that they like the mountains or coastal mountains, they dislike the tropics, and they absolutely hate the Blighted. Moving on to the Goblins, all Goblin units will have -5 health off their base stats. They will have +40% or more blight protection, and all Goblin units will cost -10%, so they're going to cost 10% less. All Goblin cities will have a population growth of 10% extra, so they'll grow 10% faster. And then all Goblin units will have Cave Crawling and Wetlands Walking, so they will have increased movement in the underground and in wetlands. They're also going to have the Night Vision trait increasing their line of sight in the underground. Goblins' terrain preference is that they like the wetlands, dislike the Arctic and the tropics, but absolutely hate the volcanic. Moving on to High Elves, the High Elf units will all have +1 magic resist, +1 ranged damage, and +1 ranged shock damage. All High Elf units will also have +20% blight weakness, so they will be 20% weaker to blight damage. All High Elf cities will gain +3 knowledge points, which are used for researching new skills. So that means that they're going to regen 3 extra knowledge points per turn per city. And High Elf units will also gain forestry, which basically means that they have increased movement in forests or dense vegetation. The High Elf terrain preference is that they like dense vegetation, dislike the tropics or subterranean territories, and hate the Blighted and Volcanic. Moving on to the humans, humans have +5 to all city production speed and have a Mariner trait, which basically means that all of their units, when they embark onto water, do not take the -4 strength penalty. Their terrain preference is fertile plains, but they dislike the Arctic and subterranean and hate the Blighted and the Volcanic. And last but not least, we have the Orcs. Orcs are going to have +5 health and +1 melee strength, but in accordance with that are going to have -1 magic resist and -1 range strength. Basically meaning that they're going to focus more on getting in and beating the hell out of somebody. And then Orcs will also have the trait of Night Vision, which increases their vision underground. The Orc terrain preference is going to be that they like the Barrens, but they dislike Arctic, hate volcanic, and blighted terrain. Alright, that about wraps up everything on the races for Age of Wonders 3. I'm going to be coming out with a class guide, so please don't forget to subscribe if that interests you at all for a nice overview on all of the classes. If you have any interest in some more in-depth guides for Age of Wonders 3, feel free to go ahead and shout out in the comments section down below. But in the meantime, please don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe to show your support. My name is Chris, and I'll see you guys soon.